This Sunday, May 17th, is the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia. It marks the day in 1990, not so long ago, that homosexuality was finally removed from the WHO's International Classification of Diseases. But homosexuality remains illegal in dozens of countries across the world, including most of the Middle East and Africa, where Senegal recently signed a law doubling the penalty to 10 years in jail. Well, for more on the global state of LGBT rights, we can bring in Flora, co-director of the LGBTI+ Observatory at the Jaurès Foundation here in France. Good morning, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Good morning. Thank you.
Could you perhaps just start by telling us what this day represents to you?
Well, this day to me is very important because it started in 2005, and that was already something that we were really looking forward to have the occasion to take stock of progress and challenges at national level and international level on these issues and bring it to the attention of all persons, of the media and politicians. It's very important to treat this issue as a political issue because that's what it is, and that's what we see internationally in different countries. It is used negatively to harm us, so it needs to be also used in a positive way, in that we need to progress on human rights and the fight against violence and discrimination, and that's what the 17th of May is all about.
And as I mentioned, Senegal is one of the countries that's becoming more hostile to the LGBT community. Can you talk a little bit about what's been happening there?
Well, yes, there has been new legislation increasing the penalties for homosexuality. This, of course, is very problematic, and it's in a trend of various countries increasing the penalties for homosexualities. We had seen a movement towards global decriminalization. We're hoping, of course, that decriminalization will progress, but we're seeing rollbacks of that in a few countries. We've seen in Uganda a few years ago a campaign, and successful campaign, to increase the penalties. We're seeing it in Senegal today. Other countries like Ghana are contemplating such situations, but also Turkey. It's something that happens in many different countries, and even in Europe, we have movements against the rights of LGBTI persons.
And in Senegal and other non-Western countries, and perhaps even in Europe, gay rights advocacy is often sort of denounced as a tool to impose foreign values. Can you talk about that argument, and how do you counter it?
Well, it's very interesting to see how it plays out, because historically, actually, homophobia and the penalization of homosexuality was a Western import to begin with. This is certainly true for Uganda in particular, where the legislation against homosexuality is a direct text that comes from the British rule. So that's a massive rereading of history, and it is completely unfounded. It's something that we see that's being bandied about also in Russia, for instance, saying that the LGBTI agenda is something that is being pushed by Europe against proper nationalists and the proper way of doing things. It's extremely harmful there as well. And it's, of course, entirely untrue. If you look at the history of LGBTI people, they have been in every country, in every zone, and have existed in all of recorded history. So this is the question of giving rights and recognizing rights is just a human rights issue, and it shouldn't be seen as a question of importing values or imposing a form of values. It's just the direct translation of human rights, and that's something that all human rights organizations at regional and local level accept globally.
And as you described it, there are a lot of political attacks on the LGBT community for political gains, but do religious beliefs sort of play a role as well? How do they come into it?
Well, it's difficult to say. In some countries, it is being used. It is usually being used in the sense that it's related to local traditions. So it can be used in a religious sense, which is to say, we don't recognize this, and there are religious reasons why we should not. This is actually something that is this is an agenda that has been pushed by fundamentalists, by U.S. fundamentalists across the globe, for when it comes to Christianity in particular, and actually has very little basis in actual fact, but is being pushed more and more as something that is part and parcel of Christian values. It's also something we see with Islamist movements, and basically internationally with many of the countries which still do criminalize homosexuality have had at least a religious-backed regime at some point, and that's when the legislation comes from. So yes, there's definitely that. It has to be said that this focus on homosexuality as a problem is something that is extremely recent historically, and that does not correspond to the actual structures of the religions themselves. This is very much a reconstitution and a modern way of framing religions against homosexuality. There are, of course, elements of conservatism and of social order and other things. But this single-minded focus and the way the arguments are put forward is very, very modern, and something very, very new, and something that is being pushed by U.S. fundamentalists. So therefore, in many ways, that agenda is also an agenda of actors that are very, very Western.
And even in countries like the US, where there are equal rights for same sex couples, there's been major backlash on transgender issues.
Yes.
Why do you think trans rights are so fraught for people?
Well, that's because many people don't know trans persons in their family or at work. So there is this notion, there is still this othering that goes on. We know that the far right in the US has tested the issue and has tested a number of arguments in the middle of the 2010s. They basically benchmarked what arguments did work with people, and they identified that they could use transphobia and use the hatred or fear of trans persons as something that people would share much more than simple homophobia, and that's why they shifted their focus toward trans people. And still the case that many people still do not understand or see trans persons around them, whereas they do in Western countries see many other they see gay and lesbian couples, they see other LGBTI individuals, but not trans persons, not quite as much. So there's this idea that there is more visibility, and that this is the product of something being pushed, and that there is contagion, and then you have, of course, a discourse with conspiracy theories about the increase of trans persons, which is, of course, entirely unfounded. But we do see this happening in many countries. This discourse. And so basically, the increased visibility of trans persons is being instrumentalized negatively to prop up fear of these people, and to justify among people who think they are open and can understand many things, to push an anti-LGBTI agenda.
And we're running out of time, but I do want to end on a more positive note. Could you kind of briefly tell us about some of the countries where we are seeing progress?
Well, we're seeing progress in many countries. In the European Union, we've seen the Court of Justice of the European Union making great strides to promote, well, to basically enforce a minimum standard of human rights that includes LGBTI persons. And we're seeing in Poland that this has been translated into practice with the first transcription of same-sex marriage. So that is very positive, especially considering the recent political history of Poland. And we're also seeing, we're hoping to see progress in Hungary in the very near future. So there are many reasons to hope as well for progress in many areas. And this is, it's not. We still have progress to do, but some countries are facing that, and certainly the European Union is still promoting that, which is a very positive development.
All right, Flora Bolter, thank you. Thank you again so much for taking the time to speak with us today. That's Flora Bolter, the co-director of the LGBTI+ Observatory at the Jaurès Foundation here in France.